Hey, it's Eric here. We're not posting an interview this week so that we can give ourselves a little break. Aubrey and I are heading up to Oregon to visit family and hopefully to get some snow. And if I'm lucky, to get some pumpkin pie, which Aubrey insists is not a Christmas dessert, but I think she's nuts. Anyway, I've been reflecting on the year, and I've been thinking about how we launched together in February with the intention of helping all of us, myself of course included, to better understand this mystery that we call human relationships. And now, 85 episodes in and nearly 200 magazine articles later, I've seen some patterns. And first and foremost, in those patterns, I've become more convinced that the shame that so many of us feel about being uniquely broken is founded on an illusion. You know, it's something that I think that we can all drop with a measure of self-awareness, but it's persistent. And that shame leads to some very toxic ends. Specifically, I've been thinking about what a rough year it's been for many of us. You know, I see much of the world through the lens of relationship dynamics, and our political climate fits perfectly with these concepts. You know, no matter where you fall on the political spectrum, you're probably pretty upset with just about everyone on the other side of the aisle right now. The phrase that I hear from everybody, it's funny in how much each side's arguments mirror the others. Everyone says, boy, how can the other side be so blind? Don't they see the facts? And the fact that everybody thinks that points to that we're missing something. As a country, we're in that painful stage of a relationship where we think that our partner might be completely nuts, but that for whatever reason we're stuck with them. You know, we don't see any viable way out of the relationship, but we can't imagine staying in it either. It's really an awful feeling. But it's an illusion. And we all have different reactions to the illusion. Some of us get angry, some of us are running from it, some are freezing and going numb. You can see these reactions all over social media right now. But no matter the reaction, they all lead to these deep feelings of fear and hopelessness about our future. And those feelings in turn lead to hate sometimes. Hate is the place where fear and hopelessness intersect, and we should work to avoid that. In a romantic relationship, that hopelessness, that feeling often spells the end of the relationship, but it doesn't have to. I've seen couples pull back from that anger and hopeless resentment spiral so many times in my career and on the show. It's not that I just know it's possible. It's that it's clear that it is hands down the most effective way to build strength into the relationship. It's who we are, so we need to harness it. And I'm not saying it's easy. Of course, it takes far more humility than any of us ever wants to muster to go through that process. It's painful, it's heart-wrenching, it requires deep self-inquiry, but it is doable. And the alternative is catastrophic in both the personal and the political arenas. I mean, listen, let's be honest with ourselves. We are in a relationship with one another in this country and on this planet, whether we like it or not. So we should probably apply some of the basic relationship tools to the situation if we want to survive. So what's the right tool? How do we melt this shame? Well, it's the application of a simple but profound concept, and that is compassion. Now, I know that word gets tossed around a lot, and I know that most of us don't pay any attention to it anymore. It's become trite. It's a little toothless in our culture. I get that. But listen, it's the idea. This idea is the cornerstone of several major world religions for a very good reason. Fundamentally, compassion is our best hope. And it has world-shaking implications when you really think about it. So what is it? Well, the dictionary has compassion defined essentially as concern for the suffering of others. And that's a start. But it is so much more. Because in order to have that concern in the first place, compassion requires us to get outside of our individual identities and to encompass understanding, to have true understanding for those around us. And true understanding means, again, getting outside of ourselves and finally realizing what we all know to be true, that we're not perfect, and that given the right circumstances, each and every one of us would almost certainly be doing exactly what our opponents are doing if we were in their shoes. And, when you're in the midst of a fight and being positional and sticking to your beliefs and views, you don't want to hear that. And I get it. I don't either. But stay with me with this concept for a second, because I'm pointing to the fact of the human condition that keeps us so focused on our own circumstances that we lose sight of reality. And a close but very dangerous cousin to that phenomenon is the way in which the slow creep of circumstances can lead us down paths that seem reasonable but maybe a little off at the time, but are utterly incomprehensible from the outside and from the perspective of history. And we are all susceptible to this. We like to point fingers at the other side and say that the other side is doing this, but we all do this. Ordinary, well-meaning people are time and again led to do things that are horrendous for the most mundane reasons, one step at a time. We see this in the experimental psychology lab, and we see it in war zones. This behavior is, for whatever reason, part of who we are. And we don't have to love it, but we do have to have compassion for it if we're going to make it. Breaking the cycle requires that understanding. It requires extraordinary focus on our internal makeup. And frankly, it's incumbent upon each and every one of us to do that work, to create that understanding if we want to avoid not just suffering, but if we want to survive. if we just want to survive. And listen, I know you think you're right about your opinions, and maybe you are. I certainly have my own opinions that I think I'm right about. This whole monologue is one of them. But it doesn't much matter if what we want is lasting relationships or if what we want is peace. The first step towards that peace is to set our opinions aside for a moment and to listen until we understand. Our opinions are valid, but our opinions come later. And remember, it's critical to get this. To understand is not to condone. You can have compassion and understanding and also have convictions and boundaries. These things are not mutually exclusive, but you do have to listen first. You have to get outside of yourself and get your opponent completely first, or you can't even communicate. What we usually refer to as compassion or understanding is just condescension, but in disguise. It's an expression of a fear of our own inadequacy. It's a way of creating an other who we can avoid, who we can be better than. Genuine understanding, the kind that really works, the kind that we all really want, and that we all have access to, melts anger. It's an expression of strength. It leads to peace. Having compassion or true understanding of someone else's perspective is not to say that all views are rational. They're not. Rather, compassion leads us to realize that we are all fallible. It really takes immense strength of character to look at somebody who is in desperately awful circumstances and to really get and to say honestly, there but for the grace of God go I. None of us is indelibly entitled to our good fortune, to our wealth, to our intelligence, to our looks, our health. Look, we're lucky to have been born with these things. We're lucky to be the kind of people who work hard, who think clearly, to have had an education. We're lucky to have what we have and to escape the suffering that we've each escaped. And recognizing that, finally accepting that in the end, none of us is too terribly important. It's our way forward because it's the truth, and the truth is the great equalizer. Understanding truth is the source of compassion. None of us gets through this life without bumping up against others. Our views must clash so that we all know where one person ends and another begins. None of us gets out of here without dealing with those clashes. But the clashes aren't the end of the story, they're the beginning. They're the cue for us to look outside of ourselves and to understand. That's our strength. Remember, we're all family. and we're all in this together. Happy holidays, my friends. Thanks for listening. Love and blessings to you. I really mean that from the bottom of my heart. We'll be back on January 2nd with an episode about a world-traveling adventure couple to get you started on your New Year's resolutions on the right foot. See you then.